The highway doesn't care about you. That's what Rex Calloway learned about the desert before he learned anything else. Not from a book, not from anyone who sat him down and explained it. From the road itself on the first morning, he rode it alone 17 years old and already carrying more than a boy that age should carry. The desert doesn't offer comfort and it doesn't offer threat. It just extends. Indifferent and enormous and honest in the way that only things without agenda can be honest. At 5:47 in the morning, U.S. Route 60 through Hardwick, Arizona, belongs to nobody. The sky runs through its changes without asking permission, purple bleeding into gray, softening toward the first suggestion of gold at the eastern edge of the world. The desert sits on both sides of the road exactly as it sat yesterday and will sit tomorrow, creosote and red rock, and the occasional saguaro standing at angles that suggest long practice at surviving things. The road cuts through all of it and keeps going indifferent to where it came from and where it ends. Rex Calloway rides through all of it at 62 miles per hour. The 1998 Fat Boys engine puts its sound against the rock formations on both sides, and the rock formations send it back, change deeper, fuller, a conversation between machine and landscape that has been going on every morning for 16 years. He knows this sound the way he knows his own pulse. Better maybe. The pulse is harder to trust. He is 63 years old. Silver hair pulled back from a face that the desert carved over 6 decades of living, in it deep lines around the eyes, a jaw that never entirely lost its hardness, the specific stillness of a man who learned early that most situations don't require you to react. 215 pounds, most of it still where it should be. His hands on the grips are large and marked in ways that each have their own story, and none of those stories have clean endings. His name is Rex Calloway. For 30 years in certain rooms in certain parts of Arizona, a different name. Iron Rex, president of the Desert Iron Motorcycle Club. Tucson chapter. The man whose name those rooms spoke quietly and without elaboration, the way they spoke about weather systems and other forces that operate outside negotiation. That was a different life. This life has pancakes at May's Diner every morning, at 6:15 a garage on the edge of Hardwick that smells like motor oil and honest work. 16 years of quiet that he did not take for granted on the best days and nearly ruined on a handful of the worst. 16 years of keeping a promise he made to the only person who ever asked him to make one. He is thinking about that promise in the dark of the early morning when his own voice rises up from somewhere inside his chest, quiet and certain as a line drawn in stone. My mother asked one thing when I walked away from that life. She said, "Promise me you'll never be that man again." I kept that promise for 16 years, until the morning I saw her face. The Harley's engine cuts to silence. The desert fills the space where the sound was. We go back 3 hours, to where it started. It begins the way most things in Rex Calloway's life begin, with coffee he didn't make himself. May's Diner sits on the corner of Mesquite and 3rd in downtown Hardwick, Arizona, and it has been there for 41 years. The building is older than that, a 1950s construction of pale brick and wide windows facing east, so the morning light comes in flat and warm and makes everything look like a painting of a diner rather than an actual one. The sign above the door reads May's Diner in red letters that have been repainted 3 times since 1983, each time slightly more faded than before, as if the sign is slowly becoming a memory of itself. May Calloway bought this building in 1983 with money saved from 11 years of working 2 jobs, waitress days, office cleaning nights. She was 44 years old and her son was 22, and already deep into a life she didn't ask him about, because she understood that asking and knowing were 2 different kinds of pain, and she could only carry so much. She took the money he handed her for the down payment, $5,000, in an envelope. No explanation offered, kissed his cheek and said, "When you're done being stupid, there will always be pancakes." It took 23 more years for him to finish being stupid. Every morning at 6:10, Rex parks the Harley in the spot directly in front of the diner's east window. Not because parking requires any particular care in Hardwick at that hour, but because May can see the bike from the kitchen, and seeing the bike means she knows he arrived, and knowing he arrived is the closest thing to a morning prayer that either of them practices. He has been parking in that spot for 16 years. The pavement is worn slightly where his kickstand lands a small shallow depression in the asphalt, the accumulated weight of 16 years of the same morning. This particular Thursday morning in August 2024, Rex pulls into the spot and kills the engine and sits there. He doesn't get off the bike. Something is wrong. He learned long ago not to dismiss that feeling. The men who dismissed it ended up in the ground before their time, and not one of them saw it coming because they had trained themselves not to see it. It isn't a loud feeling, not panic, not alarm. Quieter than that. A slight change in the texture of ordinary things, the way the air pressure shifts before a storm, that your body registers before your brain has a name for what it's registering. The diner lights are on. The open sign glows red in the window. Through the glass, he can see the red vinyl booths, the white Formica counter, the checkerboard floor that hasn't changed since 1983. Everything where it belongs, except no trucks in the parking lot. Thursday morning at 6:10, there should be at least three. Gus Hartley from the hardware store, who has been getting coffee here since before Rex was born, and who maintains strong opinions about professional baseball that he will share with any stationary person. Patty Morse from the salon, who reads paperback novels and drinks black coffee and only orders food on difficult weeks. Maybe one of the ranch hands from the Staunton property off Route 88, who come in with red dust on their boots and eat like men who have already done 4 hours of work before the sun committed to rising. Empty. Rex swings off the bike. His right knee registers its opinion about the movement, a deep ache that starts at the joint and radiates outward, the body's running invoice for a lifetime of decisions that seemed reasonable at the time. 63 years old, and the knees remember everything. He stands on the sidewalk and studies the diner, and the feeling in his chest settles into something more specific. He goes inside. The door chime rings the same bell it has been since 1983, a cheerful two-note sound that is completely wrong for what is happening in his chest. The coffee is brewing. He can smell it. The grill is on. He can hear it. Everything in its place. Everything performing normalcy. May is not behind the counter. Rex moves deeper into the diner. Past the first booth, the second around the counter to the kitchen window, where his mother should be standing with her spatula and her coffee pot, and her running commentary on how everyone in Hardwick looked like they needed more sleep and more vegetables and more of what she was about to put in front of them. She is there, standing with her back to him. Her shoulders are curved inward in a way he has never seen on her body. May Calloway has stood straight through things that would have folded most people in half. Through raising a son alone after his father came back from Korea with wounds that didn't show on the outside. Through the years when that son was making choices she didn't ask about and wasn't going to be told about regardless. Through 41 years of 6 a.m. openings and all the hard things those years contained. She is not standing straight now. Ma, you okay? She turns around. Rex Calloway has stood in rooms where the atmosphere itself carried the weight of imminent violence. He has made decisions that ended badly and lived with the consequences of those decisions for decades. None of that prepared him for what he is looking at now. Her left eye is swollen nearly shut. The skin around it has gone deep purple, black blood pooling under the surface, the body trying to contain damage done to it from the outside. Her right cheek carries the clear, unmistakable impression of knuckles. A large hand applied with deliberate force, leaving its shape in her skin like a signature. Her lower lip is split, a thin dark line of dried blood tracking down to her chin. Her right hand, wrapped in a dish towel, is held against her ribs at an angle that means the ribs have a problem. She is 85 years old. She weighs 130 pounds. Someone did this to her. 8 seconds. Rex stands without breathing, without moving, without a word available to him. Something happens inside those 8 seconds that doesn't have a clean name. The man he has been for 16 years, the quiet man, the garage man, the man who parks in the same spot and reads the paper and keeps his hands to himself, and his past buried where it belongs, that man recedes. Not gone, not yet, like a tide that has reversed direction. What comes up in the space left behind is old, it is cold, and it remembers everything. Ma, his voice comes out wrong, too quiet. The specific quiet that isn't the absence of something, but the presence of something being held down by deliberate force. She says, I fell in the kitchen. It's nothing. The words have been practiced. Past the point where they sound practiced, which is worse than if they sounded obviously false. Rex crosses the kitchen in 3 steps. Gently, because he learned gentle late in life, but he learned it completely, he takes the coffee pot from her hands and sets it on the counter. Her hands are shaking. He has never seen May Calloway's hands shake. Look at me, Ma. She won't. Please. Slowly, as if the movement costs her something she doesn't have to spare, she raises her eyes to his. He sees tears in them. Held back by will alone, the way she has held everything back her entire life, not by pretending the weight isn't there, but by deciding that the weight will not win. He has seen May Calloway cry twice in his memory. Once when his father died, once when Rex appeared at her door 16 years ago, covered in blood that wasn't his, and told her he was done. Who did this to you? Each word lands with the weight of something being decided. She says, Rex, please don't ask me that. She calls him Rex. Always Rex, never the road name, never Iron Rex. He is her son. That is the beginning and end of the taxonomy that matters to her. She says, if I tell you you'll do something, and I can't, Rex, I can't lose you again. I can't watch you go back to being that man. That man. The man who ran a chapter of the Desert Iron MC for 15 years with a combination of intelligence and calculated willingness to use violence that made his own people careful around him. The man who gave an order in October of 1991 that sent Denny Ware into a situation that Denny didn't come out of. 24 years old VP of the Tucson chapter. A face that looked at Rex with complete trust and never knew until it was too late that trust has a cost. Rex has carried a photograph of Denny Ware in his wallet for 33 years. Not as ceremony, as reminder, as the specific daily weight of what happens when a man with power makes a wrong decision in the direction of convenience rather than doubt. He buried that man, the one who made that decision. Or thought he had. The door chime rings. Both of them turn. Norma Fitch stands in the doorway wearing her pink waitress uniform, the same dress she has worn to work at May's Diner for 15 years, so consistent a presence that it has become part of the diner's identity, alongside the checkerboard floor and the red boots. She is 50 years old with the particular competence of a woman who has worked hard jobs her whole life and learned to read rooms quickly, because reading rooms quickly is not a courtesy in her profession. It is how you survive it. She reads this room in under 2 seconds. The color leaves her face. She says, oh God. May, I told you I could cover today. You didn't have to come in. May says, I'm fine, Norma. It's nothing. The word fine lands in the room, and everyone in the room knows what it weighs. Norma's eyes move to Rex. What he sees in them stops him for a moment. Not just sympathy, not just shock. Fear. Specific and targeted, and the kind that comes from knowing something and being terrified of what happens when that knowledge moves from the space inside your head to the space outside it. She knows. Rex makes his voice as gentle as the situation allows, which is not very gentle, but is enough. Norma, what happened here? She backs toward the door. Her hand goes to her throat. She says her shift doesn't start until 7. She should probably Norma Fitch. He says her name the second time, the same way he said it the first time. No change in volume, no edge added, just the weight of a name spoken by a man who means it. He says, you have known me 15 years. Have I ever given you a reason to be afraid of me? She says, no. She says, but this is different. He says, tell me why. And she does. Not all of it, but the shape of it. They said if anyone talked, they would come back, and next time it wouldn't just be. She stops. Her hand covers her mouth. But it's enough. Next time, come back. Rex feels his heart rate do something specific and deliberate slow down. Not the slow of shock, the slow of a mind that has shifted registers, that has identified a situation requiring precision rather than reaction. He knows this feeling. He spent 30 years living inside it. He tells Norma to go home, lock her doors, don't open for anyone she doesn't recognize. She gives May a long look that carries everything neither of them will put into words, and then she is gone. The silence in the diner is the silence of something that has been building for a long time, finally taking up the full amount of space it requires. Rex turns to his mother. Everything, right now. May sits down on the stool behind the counter. She looks older than she has ever looked, and he understands immediately that this isn't age. It is the specific exhaustion of carrying something heavy alone for a long time past the point where carrying it alone made any sense. 3 months ago, she says, her voice barely clears the space between them. A man came in, suit and tie, business cards, said he represented a development company out of Phoenix Copper Sun Development LLC, wanted to buy the diner, made an offer. Rex waits, $165,000. Rex does the math without expression. The building is a corner lot on Mesquite and 3rd in downtown Hardwick, Arizona, a town that has been growing steadily for a decade, that sits at the intersection of 3 routes connecting Tucson to Phoenix, that has appeared in regional development reports often enough that people in Phoenix offices know its name. The building alone is worth north of $800,000. The business, 41 years of regulars, of reputation, of the kind of goodwill that cannot be manufactured or replaced, adds more. $165,000 is not an offer. It is an insult wearing the clothes of commerce. May said no. The man smiled, said she should think about it, that opportunities like this don't present themselves twice. He came back 2 weeks later. Same offer. She said no again. A week after that, someone put a brick through the front window at 2 in the morning. Sheriff came, filed a report, called it probably kids. Rex's jaw tightens. Then last month, all 4 tires on her car slashed overnight in the parking lot. Same verdict. Kids. And you didn't call me, Rex says. What would you have done? She looks at him, and the fear in her eyes is woven through with something harder. Not resignation, but the clear-eyed geometry of a woman who has spent 85 years understanding how things actually work. What could you have done that wouldn't make everything worse? Fair question. The old Rex, Iron Rex, the man with the patch, wouldn't have made it better. He would have found whoever was responsible and made them regret the specific sequence of decisions that led to his mother's parking lot, and that regret would have escalated. And escalation has its own logic that doesn't take intentions into account. May knows this. She has always known this. It is precisely why she asked for the promise 16 years ago. When did they hit you? Rex asks. She touches the bruise so carefully as if disturbing it might cause it to spread. Last night, she says, after closing. I was counting the register. The back door, I thought I'd locked it. Her voice breaks on the last 3 words. She pulls it back. He was just there, she says. In the kitchen. Big man. Taller than you. Black jacket. Rex waits. Every muscle in his body is engaged in the work of staying still. He said I had 24 hours to reconsider. That the company was being generous. That generosity had limits. And you told him no. Something old and fierce moves through her good eye. The May Calloway who stared down drunk men twice her size across this same counter for 4 decades, who raised a son the world kept trying to break and refused to let it, who has not yet found a reason sufficient to change who she is. Yes, I told him this place was mine, that I built it and I wasn't selling it to anyone who was going to tear it down and put up something that had no memory of anything that came before it. Rex is quiet. Then he hit you. Yes. Her voice is very small, not because she is small, because she is telling the truth about something that hurt her, and the truth about things that hurt is always small when it first comes out. He said she continues that if I called the police, if I told anyone. She pauses. He said old women have accidents, falls, fires, things that don't raise questions. The sound in Rex's chest in this moment is not a sound. It is the specific absence of one, the silence of something that has been held in careful tension, releasing slowly the way a cable under stress goes slack, not with noise, but with a change in the quality of stillness around it. He reaches out, touches her bruised cheek with 2 fingers so carefully that she barely registers the contact. He says, that promise I made you. It was about me not going looking for violence. She says, Rex. He says, this is different. How? He looks at his mother's face, at what was done to it. He says, because violence came looking for you. He turns and walks toward the door. She calls after him. Rex Calloway, you come back here right now. He is already through the door. Outside, the morning air is carrying heat, dry and honest, the kind that announces itself without apology and makes no promises about getting better before noon. Rex stands on the sidewalk in front of May's diner with his hands in his pockets and breathes. Once. Twice. The town is beginning to wake up around him. A truck pulling into the hardware store. The salon lights coming on. The surface of a Thursday morning performing its routine with complete commitment. He pulls out his phone, dials a number he hasn't called in 2 years. It rings 4 times. The voice that answers carries the specific texture of a man who has been awake for a while and wasn't expecting good news, regardless of who called. This better matter. It's Rex, he says. I need information. The voice changes, quality becomes careful and focused, the way voices become when they recognize that certain calls at certain hours are never about ordinary things. Rex. Hell. Thought you dropped off the edge of the map. What do you need? There's a company out of Phoenix, Copper Sun Development, LLC. I need to know who owns it, who runs it, what they're actually building, and who's funding it. A pause. Then business or personal? Personal. How personal? They put their hands on my mother. The silence that follows has weight. Then quietly, I'm sorry, Rex. Give me a few hours. I'll find what there is to find. One more thing, Rex says. The man they sent to do the work. His name and history, if you can. Understood. You thinking about going back? Rex says, I'm trying not to. A pause. Then, the fact that you said trying is the whole story, isn't it? Watch yourself. He ends the call. Stands on the sidewalk for a moment longer, looking at the corner of Mesquite and 3rd, at the diner that has stood on this corner for 41 years, because one woman refused to let it fall. Then he walks 2 blocks north to the sheriff's office on Carver Street. Sheriff Burl Taggart's building is a squat brick structure from the 1960s that has been showing its age since approximately 1975. The county has been promising renovation funds for 11 years. Burl has been pretending to believe them for 10. His department truck current model Ford Rex estimates $38,000 at invoice sits in the reserve spot out front. It is a notably nice truck for a man drawing $52,000 a year before pension contribution. Rex has noticed this truck before. This morning he is noticing it with different attention. The front door is unlocked. The receptionist's desk is empty. She starts at 8. Burl's office stands half open. Rex knocks once. Come in. Burl Taggart is 59 years old, gray hair cut military short, the lean build of a man who still runs most mornings. He served in the Gulf War 1991 ground campaign logistics, came back and became a cop and eventually a sheriff, and has held the job for 12 years. He and Rex have been drinking bourbon together on Friday evenings for a decade. Trading stories Burls from the Gulf Rex is kept carefully vague on specifics, but honest about their shape. The comfortable silence of men who have both been in places that don't appear on any map and have made a kind of peace with what they found there. Burl looks up, smiles. Rex, early even for you. Coffee? Rex steps into the office, closes the door. The smile fails. Something in the quality of Rex's stillness, the way he's standing, the way his eyes have settled on Burl's face without moving, tells the sheriff that whatever this is, he should put his coffee cup down. Rex lays it out. May's face, the bruising, the broken window 3 months back, the slashed tires last month, the official reports that called it kids both times. He watches Burl's face as he speaks, and what he watches for is not reaction. Reaction would be normal, appropriate, the response of a man hearing something for the first time. He watches for the specific stillness of a man bracing for an impact he knew was eventually coming. He finds it. Rex finishes, lets the silence sit. Burl says, "Did she file a report?" Rex says she didn't file a report because the man who hit her told her what happens to old women who involve the police. Burl's face has gone pale in the particular way of a man who is revising his understanding of how bad this moment is. Rex says, "What do you know about Copper Sun development?" The question drops into the room and stays there. Burl doesn't say he doesn't know what Rex is talking about. He doesn't offer denial or confusion or any of the ordinary performances of a man who has nothing to be guilty about. He just sits with the expression of someone who has been standing at the edge of a very long fall and has just felt the ground shift. Rex says, "We've been friends 10 years, Burl. I've drunk your bourbon and listened to you talk about Margaret and the fight she's been in. I'm asking you one time, what do you know?" Burl rubs his face with both hands. When he speaks, the texture has gone out of his voice. 3 years ago, he says, "I got a call from a lawyer in Phoenix, represented investors interested in Hardwick. Wanted to know if the town would be receptive to a major development project." Rex waits. They said revitalization. Resort casino jobs, tax base. Things a town like Hardwick genuinely needs. He pauses. "I said I'd talk to people, feel out the community. And they were grateful." They were. Burl looks at the desk. At first it was tickets, then a weekend somewhere nice. Then they asked me to help things move. Make sure property owners understood the benefits. Handle any friction quietly. You said yes. Burl looks at him with the eyes of a man who has already rendered his own verdict. Margaret's first treatment was $40,000 that insurance wouldn't cover, he says. Second round, they were talking about more than that. His voice is flat. They offered help. I told myself it was just business, just property development, that no one would actually get hurt. But someone did. Yes. Rex is quiet for a long moment. He says the reports, the broken window, the tires. I told myself it was pressure tactics, Burl says. That's what they told me it would be. Psychological financial pressure. Nobody gets hurt. Rex says, my mother's face says otherwise. Yes, Burl's voice barely carries across the desk. I know. He opens the bottom drawer, takes out a folder, slides it across without being asked. Inside, property records, transfer documents, purchase agreements. Rex scans them. 8 properties in downtown Hardwick. The hardware store, the salon, the old Rex Theater standing dark since 2009 but still holding its corner. All transferred to Copper Sun Development, LLC, in the past 18 months. Oh, no, all of them, except no woman. His finger stops at the bottom of the list. May's Diner. No transfer signature, the last holdout on the block. Burl says they're building a casino resort, have state gaming approval conditioned on a specific property boundary. Without the corner lot, the footprint doesn't meet the terms of the approval. Without May's, the whole project fails. Rex says the man they sent, Wade Merch Burl says, did federal time for aggravated assault and weapons charges. Out 4 years. He's been in Hardwick for about 3 months working as Copper Son's field consultant. He picks up a pen, writes an address on a notepad page, tears it off, hands it over. Rex takes it. At the door, he pauses. Burl is sitting behind his desk with the folder spread out in front of him like evidence in a case against himself. Rex says, your wife, how is she? Burl says 6 months clean. Remission, maybe. We won't know for certain for another year. Rex nods. He says, the money you took is already spent. You can't unspend it, but there's still a direction you can choose to go from here. He walks out without waiting for an answer, not because the answer doesn't matter, because Burl needs to arrive at it without Rex standing in the room making it feel like a performance. Back at the Harley, Rex sits with his hands on the grips for a moment, the morning heat already earning its keep. He reaches into the saddlebag, past the first aid kit, the tire repair kit, the rain cover he used last in a storm outside Flagstaff in 2019. At the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth, is what he carries and has always carried since the day he walked away from the life carries, not because he intends to use it, but because pretending it doesn't exist has always seemed like a more dangerous form of dishonesty than acknowledging that it does. He unwraps it. The Desert Iron MC patch, Tucson chapter, President's Rocker. The leather worn and the colors faded but legible, the record of 15 years of a life that left marks on other people's lives that don't fade as easily as leather. Beneath it, the Colt 1911. His father's gun, carried from the port at Inchon to the Chosin Reservoir in 1952 and brought home and eventually given to his son on his 18th birthday with 2 conditions attached. Respect what it is capable of and never use it for something you cannot live with afterward. Rex looks at both of them resting in the cloth. He wraps the patch back, returns it to the bag. He keeps the Colt, places it in the outside pocket of his jacket where the outline is visible. Not concealed. Present. The distinction is the kind that only matters if someone is paying careful attention, and Rex has always been a man who pays careful attention to distinctions. He opens his wallet. Behind his license in the slot he has used for nothing else for 33 years is the photograph. Denny Ware, 24 years old, grinning at the camera with the specific unguarded openness of someone who doesn't yet know that trust has a cost. Someone who believed completely and without reservation that the man on the other side of that trust was incapable of putting him somewhere dangerous without sufficient reason. Rex made a decision in October of 1991 that was based on information he chose to accept over doubt he chose to suppress. The doubt was inconvenient. Accepting the information meant not having to admit an earlier error. He suppressed the doubt. He gave the order. Denny Ware went where the order sent him and didn't come back. Rex has carried the photograph for 33 years. Not as penance, as memory of what happens when a man in a position of power chooses convenience over doubt. He looks at the photograph now, looks at the face of someone who trusted him. He has one thing he needs to do before he rides east to the address on the notepad page. He gets off the bike, goes back inside the garage, not the diner, his garage 2 blocks over on the side street where his work life lives. Sits down at the desk, opens the laptop he uses for invoicing, and parts orders and the occasional email to someone he hasn't managed to lose touch with entirely. He opens the server account, one he set up 3 years ago, as a precaution, the kind of precaution a man with his history maintains in the same spirit that other people keep spare keys. He sets up a timed transmission. 3 recipients, FBI Phoenix Field Office, the Arizona Attorney General, and the Associated Press Bureau on North Central. The instruction is simple: at midnight tonight, send everything in this server to all 3, unless a cancel code is entered before then. He creates the cancel code, writes it on a piece of paper, puts the paper in the top left drawer of the desk. Then he pulls out his secondary phone, a burner, a habit he has maintained since the 1990s and has never had a good reason to abandon, and calls 2 people. Garrett Wills, who does not have a notable job description, but can be trusted with specific pieces of information. And Holt Draven, currently in Nevada, whose name he is about to speak in a context Holt will not be prepared for. He gives both of them the server address and the access information, and the same instruction: if Rex has not called by 11:30 tonight, do not wait for him. Send it to the authorities themselves and let the mechanism do what he built it to do. Garrett says, "You going somewhere interesting?" Rex says, "Working on it." He ends the call. The server is ready. The container exists. It is empty because he doesn't have anything to put in it yet. But it exists and the mechanism is running and the midnight clock is moving. He built the structure this morning because The structures that matter need to be built before you need them, not after. Now he needs to go fill it. He locks the garage, gets back on the Harley, starts it. The address on the notepad page is a trailer park on the east edge of Hardwick. He has driven past it twice a week for 16 years without stopping. He pulls out of the side street onto Mesquite, turns east. The desert opens up ahead of him, the way it always does, without ceremony, without welcome, extending itself as far as the eye can resolve the details. Rex rides into it with his hands steady on the grips and the Colt against his jacket and the photograph in his wallet and 16 years of something he has to decide in the next few miles, whether it was growth or just distance. He thinks about his mother's hands shaking when she reached for the coffee pot. He thinks about Denny Ware at 24 years old trusting. He thinks about what kind of man rides east on a Thursday morning in Hardwick, Arizona toward an address on a notepad page. He already knows the answer. He has known it since he looked at May's face in the kitchen this morning and felt the tide reverse. The question that has always mattered is not what kind of man goes. It is what kind of man comes back. The Harley moves east on Route 60, and the desert receives it without comment, and the road comes at Rex, one illuminated section at a time, the same road it has always been, asking nothing and offering nothing except the simple forward motion of a thing that keeps going as long as you keep going with it. He opens the throttle. The engine answers. And Rex Calloway rides toward whatever this morning is going to cost him, carrying everything he has learned in 63 years about the difference between a man who has done violent things and a man who is a violent thing, hoping, as he has hoped, every difficult morning for 16 years, that he still knows which one he is. The trailer park at the east edge of Hardwick doesn't have a name on the sign out front. Just a number, a county address marker, green letters on white, the kind of sign that exists for the benefit of emergency services and no one else. 28 mobile homes arranged in two irregular rows, most of them dating from the 1980s, held together by rust and stubbornness, and the particular dignity of people who are making what they have work because there is no alternative to making what you have work. Rex has driven past this place twice a week for 16 years. He has never stopped here before. He parks the Harley 2 spaces down from the address on the notepad sheet and cuts the engine. The sudden silence has weight to it. Morning heat pressing down from a sky that has gone from pale gold to hard white in the time it took Rex to ride here from May's Diner. Across the road, a woman in her 70s is watering a planter of dead petunias with the focused attention of someone who refuses to acknowledge that the petunias are dead. A shirtless man in his 40s is working on the undercarriage of a truck that has not moved under its own power in some time. He looks at Rex, then looks back at the truck. Out here, minding your business is not a courtesy. It is a condition of survival. Space 14 is a single wide from around 1984. Once white, now the color of old paper. The kind of color a thing turns when it has been a long time since anyone saw it as temporary. A black pickup truck sits in front of it, a newer model, probably 2 years old. The kind of truck that tells you immediately that it does not belong to whoever is renting this space. Too much truck for this address. Too clean. Too confident. Rex dismounts, stretches his back until something gives way with a sound like distant furniture moving. 63 years old, and the body presents its accounting every morning, and some mornings the accounting is longer than others. This morning it is long. He walks to the door, knocks, waits, nothing. Knocks again, harder. The door opens. The man who fills the doorway is younger than Rex by perhaps 15 years, 6'2", 240, the build of someone who has kept himself in condition not for vanity, but because his profession requires it. Shaved head, thick neck, a scar running from the outside corner of his left eye to the angle of his jaw. Not the scar of an accident, but the scar of a blade drawn with purpose by someone who knew what they were doing and intended it as a message. He wears jeans and a dark shirt that fits him tightly across the chest, and his eyes, when they land on Rex, do the thing that the eyes of men in his profession always do. They move in a specific sequence: face, hands, stance, exits, reading threat and capability. The way a mechanic reads an engine. Professional, efficient. The eyes of a man who has spent a long time being paid to assess situations quickly and accurately. Those eyes arrive at their conclusion. Rex watches them do it. Help you. Rex says, "I'm looking for Wade Murch." The man says, "Why?" Rex says, "We need to talk about an old woman with a black eye." Something moves in the man's face. Not surprised, he was expecting this conversation in some form eventually. The only question was the shape it would take. He says, "Don't know what you're talking about." Rex says, "Yes, you do." They look at each other for a moment. Two men who have both lived in the specific country of violence, who recognize the terrain in each other, the way travelers recognize roads they have walked before. Rex watches Wade Murch complete his assessment and arrive at the conclusion that the gray-haired man at his door is more than he appears to be. Something shifts in Murch's posture, not quite respect, not quite caution, the recalibration of a man adjusting his initial estimate upward. "You want to do this out here," Murch says. "Front of witnesses." Rex says, "I'd rather do it inside." Murch looks at him for another moment. Then he turns and walks back into the trailer. Rex follows. The interior of the space is sparse in the way of a man who has no intention of staying and no desire to leave evidence of having been. A couch, a television, a kitchen area with nothing on the counter and nothing in the dish rack, the careful blankness of someone who treats every location as temporary. No photographs, no personal objects of any kind. The space of a man who has learned to move through the world without attachment because attachment has a cost he cannot afford. Murch turns to face him, crosses his arms. So he says, "You want to know about the old lady?" Rex says, "I want to know who's paying you, who owns Copper Sun Development, and what they're actually building." Murch looks at him for a long moment. Then something happens in his expression, a kind of genuine appraisal. The reconsideration of someone who entered this conversation expecting one thing and is beginning to understand he got something different. He says, "You're Iron Rex. That's who you are." Rex says, "Used to be. Heard you went soft. Heard you retired. Gave up the patch, moved home, became somebody's neighbor." "Some of that is true." Murch unfolds his arms, sets his feet a shoulder's width apart. The specific unconscious geometry of a man who has decided that the conversation is about to change format. He says, "I did my research when I got to Hardwick. Read up on the territory. You know what I found? Iron Rex Calloway ran the Desert Iron MC in Tucson for 15 years. Retired 2008. Living quiet. Word in the community is he's done. Washed out. Old." Rex says people read a lot of things. The first punch comes fast. Murch is good, genuinely good. Not just large, and the jab is thrown with the compact efficiency of someone who has trained rather than just fought. It is aimed at Rex's jaw. Rex isn't there when it arrives. He has moved left and slightly inside the kind of movement that looks simple and costs years to make automatic. The punch misses by 3 inches. Rex's response is not a punch. It is a single precise movement, his left hand taking Murch's extended wrist, his right forearm coming up under the elbow, the application of specific leverage in a specific direction. The elbow is not designed to bend that way. The sound it makes is final. Murch goes down to one knee. The sound he makes is involuntary. Rex steps to the side, takes a fistful of shirt collar, and guides the larger man the rest of the way to the floor with a combination of controlled momentum and the application of the knee's own now limited structural integrity. It takes approximately 4 seconds from the first punch to Murch lying on the linoleum with Rex's boot placed on his sternum. Not pressing hard, just there, reminding him of the geometry. Rex's breathing has elevated slightly. His right shoulder hurts in a way that will matter more tomorrow. He notes both things and sets them aside. $5,000, he says. "That's what they paid you to put your hands on my mother." Murch stares up at him from the floor. His face has done something that Rex has seen before in men like him, a specific kind of recalibration that happens when a man who believes himself to be among the most capable people in any room discovers that the room contains an exception. It is not quite humility. It is more like the adjustment of a navigator who has just learned that his map has an error. He says from the floor, his voice careful around the pain in his arm, "They said you were done." Rex says, "Tell me about Copper Sun Development." Murch is quiet for a moment, assessing. The math of his situation is not complicated. He does the math. "They're buying up downtown Hardwick," he says. "The whole block, 9 properties, 8 of them already transferred. Casino resort. They've got state gaming approval groundbreaking scheduled for next spring." "Where's the money coming from?" "Offshore. Shell companies. I don't know the full chain. I don't ask those questions. What I know is that the numbers are large enough that the people involved are not going to walk away because one old woman says no." "How large?" Murch looks at him. 800 million, he says. "That's the full development projection. Your mother's diner is the last parcel they need. Without that corner lot, the footprint doesn't work. The gaming approval is conditioned on a specific property boundary. Without it, the whole thing falls apart. The investors walk." Rex says nothing. He lets the number settle in his chest like water finding its level. $800 million. And the thing standing between that number and the people who want it is a 41-year-old diner on the corner of Mesquite and third run by an 85-year-old woman who makes pancakes and has never in her life done anything to deserve what was done to her last night. He says, "Who's Preston Draven?" Murch looks at him, goes still. Then slowly he reaches into the back pocket of his jeans, a careful movement communicating no threat, and pulls out a business card. He holds it up between two fingers. Rex takes it. The card is heavy stock off-white embossed lettering. Copper Sun Development, LLC, Phoenix, Arizona. And below that in clean serif font, Preston Draven, Chief Executive Officer. Rex looks at the card. He reads the name again. Draven. He stands there with the card in his hand and the boot still on Murch's chest, and he is very, very still. From the outside, it might look like nothing is happening. From the inside, something large is shifting into a new position, and the shifting takes time, and the time is not something he can hurry. Preston Draven, Holt Draven's boy, the one who went to law school. Real estate law, clean, legitimate, the kind of success story a father tells his old friends with quiet pride and a little wonder that something good came out of the life they led. The card in Rex's hand. Murch says from the floor, "You know him?" Rex says, "I know his father." He steps back and takes his boot off Murch's chest. He does not help him up. "What happens now?" Murch says. Rex looks down at him. He says, "You're going to leave Hardwick tonight. You're going to leave the state. And you're never going to work for these people again." Murch sits up, cradling his arm, his eyes on Rex. "And if I don't," Rex says, "I know people in every state prison in Arizona. I know people in federal facilities in 3 states. You're 4 years out of a sentence. You know what happens when word circulates about what you did to get that sentence reduced and what you've been doing since and who you did it to." Murch's jaw tightens. Rex continues, "That's not a threat. It's a description of available facts and the probable outcomes of those facts." He looks at the man on the floor. "I'm going to leave now. When I come back to check if you've followed my advice, I won't be this polite." He walks to the door. Murch says behind him, "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about your mother. I didn't know she was yours. Not that it changes what I did." Rex pauses at the door. He doesn't turn around. He says, "It doesn't change anything. But I heard it." He walks out into the hard morning light. The call from Holt comes in at 11:40. Rex is in his garage at his desk, laptop open, working through the photographs he took of the documents on Murch's kitchen table. The property records, the transfer agreements, the Copper Sun corporate filings that Murch had kept as men in his profession often do as insurance, just in case. The documents tell a story that is worse in certain dimensions than Rex anticipated. He already knew the casino was a money laundering operation. The structure of the financing is not subtle once you understand what to look for: shell companies layered inside other shell companies, money moving through Caribbean accounts, the offshore architecture of funds that cannot survive scrutiny of their origin. Rex has seen this structure before in different industries. The casino business is a particularly clean vehicle for it because the core activity, exchanging cash for chips, chips for cash, makes the tracking of individual transactions genuinely difficult even for trained investigators. What he hadn't known before he read the 4th document in the folder was the other piece. There is a note in the file, an internal communication between Copper Sun's executive office and a logistics company. He doesn't recognize 2 initials on the letterhead and address in Miami that resolves when he puts it into a property search to a vacant commercial building. The language in the note is business language, carefully technical, the kind of language used by people who have attorneys reviewing their correspondence. But the language read carefully describes a secondary revenue stream from the resort operation. Not gambling, not hospitality. The careful technical language of people who have found a way to move human beings through a legitimate-seeming facility without the facility appearing to be what it is. Rex reads it twice. Then he closes the laptop and sits in his garage for 3 minutes doing nothing but breathing. He has done bad things in his life. He has made decisions that hurt people. He has been, for a significant portion of his adult existence, a man whose relationship with right and wrong was shaped more by loyalty and self-interest than by anything that would survive daylight examination. He knows this. He has spent 16 years knowing this. But some things sit outside the spectrum of what Rex Calloway will be neutral about. His phone rings. It's Holt. "I'm on Mesquite," Holt says. "Coming up on the diner. Where are you?" Rex gives him the garage address. 7 minutes later, he hears the sound of a motorcycle in the alley, and Holt Draven fills the garage doorway, 66 years old, and still carrying the frame of the man who wrote VP for the Desert Iron MC, though the years have softened some of the harder edges. Graybeard now where there used to be none. reading glasses in his breast pocket that Rex has never seen before. The lines around his eyes are deep, and the eyes themselves are tired in a way that Rex recognizes as the specific tiredness of someone who has not been sleeping well. They look at each other. Rex stands. And then, without any particular plan to do it, they close the distance and hold on. Two old men in a garage, the smell of oil and metal around them, holding each other up the way men hold each other when words are inadequate and the weight is too much to carry alone. They stay like that for a moment that has no specific length. When they separate, Rex hands him the business card. Holt takes it, looks at it. His hand is not steady. Rex watches the large man process what he is holding. The way his eyes read the name on the card and then read it again, as if the second reading might produce a different result. The way his jaw sets. The particular stillness that moves over him. Not the stillness of a man in control, but the stillness of a man working very hard not to show that he isn't. He's your boy, Rex says. Quietly. No accusation in it. Just the fact placed on the table. Holt says he's my boy. His voice is barely audible. Rex pulls two chairs away from the workbench. They sit. Rex says, "Tell me what you know." Holt is quiet for a long moment. The garage is quiet around them. Outside, Hardwick is having a normal Thursday. Somewhere down the alley, a dog is barking at something with great conviction and no apparent result. About 4 months ago, Holt says finally, "I heard things, rumors. You know how it is, you've been out of the life for a while, but the people you used to run with still talk. Someone said they heard Preston was involved in a property deal in Arizona that had some irregular elements. I called him. What did he say? He said it was aggressive but legal. He said real estate development has a rough side and he knew how to handle it. He said not to worry about it. And you believed him." Holt doesn't answer immediately. Rex says, "Or you chose to believe him." Holt looks at the floor. His hands are resting on his knees and Rex can see them. Big hands scarred in the way of mechanics and fighters. The hands of a man who has worked hard and hit hard and lived hard. They are not moving. They are absolutely still in the way that hands are when the person they belong to is exerting deliberate, effortful control. "He's my son," Rex Holt says. Rex says, "Denny Ware was like my son." The words land. Holt looks up. Rex says, "I gave an order in October of 1991. I had information that I thought was solid. I had a plan that I thought was sound. And I sent Denny into a situation that I should have known was compromised because I chose to believe the information I had rather than the doubt I felt. Because the doubt was inconvenient. Because acting on it would have required me to admit I had made an earlier error, and I didn't want to admit that." He pauses. "I have carried his face in my wallet for 33 years, Rex says, not as penance, as a reminder that choosing not to know a thing doesn't make you innocent of it. It just means the knowing comes later when there's less you can do about it." Holt is very still. "You chose not to know," Rex says, "because not knowing meant you didn't have to choose." The silence between them has weight now. The weight of 40 years of friendship and the specific painful geometry of this moment inside all of those years. "He's my son," Holt says again, but his voice is different this time. It is not a defense. It is a man saying out loud the thing he has to carry, the thing that makes this impossible, that makes every direction the wrong direction. "I know," Rex says. "What do we do? We find out everything, and then we end it." Holt says I should be the one to go to Phoenix. He's my responsibility. Rex looks at him steadily. He says, "If you walk into that room and Preston asks you to walk away, if he says the right words, looks at you the right way, what do you do?" Holt doesn't answer. Rex says blood makes you hesitate. And in the kind of room we're walking into, hesitation is the difference between ending it and making it worse. Holt stares at the floor. His jaw works. Rex says, "You can help me in a different way, a better way. And when it's done, I'll need you here for my mother." A long silence. Then Holt nods. Once. The nod of a man who has made a decision that costs him something real. Rex stands. He has things to do before dark, and the afternoon is already tilting toward its second half. He says, "I'm going to Phoenix tonight." There is a particular kind of preparation that has nothing to do with packing. Rex spends the afternoon in his garage not doing dramatic things. He changes the oil on a 72 Sportster that belongs to a 70-year-old woman in town who rides it every Sunday alone the way other people go to church. He answers 2 phone calls from customers about work estimates. He makes a sandwich and eats it standing at his workbench and drinks 2 cups of coffee, both from a pot he made himself in the small kitchen behind the office. He does all of these things with complete attention. He does not think about what comes tonight. He has already thought about what comes tonight. There is nothing left to think. Thinking more would be a kind of avoidance. At 4:30, he goes to his desk, opens the laptop. He does the thing he has been building toward since this morning. The documents he photographed from Murch's trailer, all of it, every page, every image he uploads to a server. A specific server one he set up 3 years ago, for reasons unrelated to this situation. The kind of precaution that a man with his history takes in the same spirit that other men keep spare keys. The upload takes 11 minutes. He creates a timed instruction, a digital mechanism that will at midnight tonight forward the entire package automatically to 3 recipients: the FBI Phoenix Field Office, the Arizona Attorney General, and the Associated Press Bureau in Phoenix. Unless he enters a specific code before midnight to cancel the transmission. He calls a contact he has not called in 2 years. A man named Garrett Wills, who does not have a notable profession and who has over the course of 30 years proved to be someone who can be trusted with specific pieces of information. He tells Garrett where the server is, what the access code is, and what to do with that information if Rex doesn't call by 11:30 tonight. Garrett says, "You going somewhere interesting?" Rex says, "Phoenix." A pause. Then, "You need me to come?" Rex says, "No. I need you to stay exactly where you are and do exactly what I said if I don't call." Understood. He ends the call. He opens his email and types a message to Holt. The message is 3 sentences. It contains the server address, the access code, and instructions that duplicate what he told Garrett. Belt and suspenders. He learned belt and suspenders from a man who is no longer alive because he didn't practice it. He sits for a moment at the desk. He thinks about his father, who carried this colt from Incheon to the Chosin Reservoir and back and gave it to his 18-year-old son with 2 conditions. He thinks about his mother, who is behind a counter on the corner of Mesquite, and third, right now moving carefully because her ribs hurt making coffee, because she doesn't know any other way to be, having spent 85 years learning that the way through a thing is through it. He thinks about Denny Ware, 24 years old, grinning at the camera with the trust of someone who didn't know yet that trust has a cost. He thinks about what kind of man goes to Phoenix tonight. The answer is the kind who already made every decision that needed to be made this morning. The kind who isn't going there in rage or in the hot recklessness of the young. The kind who is going because a situation has been created that cannot be resolved from Hardwick, Arizona, and because the person responsible for it is in Phoenix, and because some things you have to face directly or they will follow you home. He locks the garage, walks to the Harley, checks the Colt, confirms the chamber, returns it to the inside pocket of his jacket. The weight of it against his ribs is the same weight it has always been. He does not find it comforting. He finds it honest. He starts the engine. The sound fills the alley and rolls out into the street and carries across the evening air of Hardwick. He rides west on Route 60. Phoenix is 112 miles. The desert at dusk is a different country than the desert at dawn. Dawn is the desert welcoming you, or at least tolerating your presence. Dusk is the desert reminding you that the dark was here before you and will be here after you, and your relationship with it has always been provisional. The colors are more dramatic, deep orange and hard purple, the sky performing its end-of-day reckoning with a seriousness that the morning doesn't have. The temperature drops 4 degrees in the space of 30 minutes. The headlight of the Harley cuts into the gathering dark, and the road comes at Rex in sections, one illuminated 100 yards at a time. He is 40 minutes outside Hardwick when it happens. There is a black SUV parked on the shoulder ahead, pulled partly onto the dirt hazard lights, going the international signal of car trouble. Rex slows slightly, habit and road courtesy. He is 100 yards back when the driver's door opens and a man steps out into the road. Then the rear door. Then a second vehicle coming up fast on his left from a crossroad he hadn't focused on, and a third behind him appearing in his mirror with the suddenness of something that was waiting. 3 vehicles, at least 4 men visible, positioned with a precision that has nothing accidental in it. Rex brings the Harley to a stop. The man who walked into the road is not Wade Murch. He is younger, broader, with the particular posture of someone who is accustomed to situations in which his size is the first and often final argument. He holds up one hand in the universal gesture of stop, as if Rex has a choice about stopping. "Mr. Calloway," he says. "Mr. Draven would like a word." Rex looks at the man, looks at the vehicles, does the geometry. He says he could have called. The man says he prefers this. They take the phone, they take it carefully, professionally, without theater or particular aggression. This is not a group of men who feel the need to assert themselves through unnecessary force. They are transporting Rex, not punishing him, and they understand the difference. The distinction matters to Rex's information. it means Preston Draven still needs him intact. They drive for 18 minutes on roads Rex does not fully track in the dark. They stop at a structure that has the dimensions and materials of a warehouse, metal walls, concrete floor, a few high-placed windows painted black on the inside. The kind of structure that exists in the gaps between incorporated areas on the unmarked side of county lines, anonymous by design. Inside, there are 4 men, including the 2 from the vehicles. There are folding chairs. There is a table with a water bottle on it that nobody offers Rex. There is a light source in the high center of the space that creates a clear middle and deep shadows at the edges. Rex sits in the chair they indicate. The man who drove asks questions, routine questions about Rex's intentions, about who else knows what he knows, about what he plans to do with the information he gathered from Wade Murch. Rex answers some of them honestly because the honest answers cost him nothing. He is here because someone told Preston he was coming, which means Preston has a source somewhere close to Rex's day, and there is no point in pretending otherwise. He does not answer the questions about the documents, about who else has been told about the server. He answers these questions with silence, which is also an answer, but a less useful one. The man who drives does not raise his voice. He is professional. He is also, Rex notes, operating with the patience of someone who knows that time is on his side. Preston Draven does not need Rex dead. He needs Rex cooperative, or at minimum, he needs Rex absent, and both of those things are achievable without fatality. After 40 minutes, they take Rex's phone and put him in a small room at the back of the warehouse, a former office by the look of it, a desk still there with the ghost of someone's paperwork and the surface stains. No window. One door. A lock that Rex evaluates and files. He waits. He waits the way he has waited in difficult rooms before, without panic, without spinning out into futures he cannot control. He sits with what is, and what is right now is a locked room, and a missing phone in a situation that requires patience more than anything else. He waits 4 hours. At approximately 10 in the evening, based on his reading of his watch before they took it, they didn't take the watch an oversight that tells him something about the difference between professionals and thorough professionals. The sound outside the door changes. One set of footsteps instead of 2. Movement that has the quality of someone who is in a position rather than moving between positions. A guard, but only one. Rex has been sitting in the dark for 4 hours doing what the darkness is good for, which is thinking. He knows several things. He knows that someone between his garage and the Phoenix Highway knew he was coming. He doesn't know who. The possibilities are limited. Holt Burl, Taggart, Garrett Wills, and the conversation itself in his garage where he laid out his thinking perhaps more explicitly than he intended. He doesn't know which of these it is, and there is no way to know from here, so he sets it aside. He knows that his phone is gone, which means the server instruction is the only remaining mechanism for the evidence. He knows the server will transmit at midnight unless he enters the cancel code, which he cannot do from this room, which means that in approximately 2 hours, the evidence goes to the FBI regardless of what happens tonight. He knows that getting to Phoenix is still necessary. Not because the evidence needs him, the evidence will move without him, but because Preston Draven, confronted with what is about to happen, is a man who might make a desperate decision about the remaining obstacle between himself and the deal he needs. And the remaining obstacle is a woman named May who is sleeping right now above a diner on the corner of Mesquite and 3rd. Rex stands up. He goes to the door, listens. One set of footsteps positioned just outside, moving in the occasional short arc of a man trying to stay alert in the monotony of a guard detail. Rex waits. He waits for the footsteps to complete one full pattern. He counts 4 repetitions and establishes the rhythm. The pause at each end, the turn, the 4 steps back. Roughly 12 seconds per cycle. The guard is young based on the lightness of the footfall, and the occasional sound of a phone screen activating the youngest guard has the worst discipline in Rex's experience. And the worst discipline means the most predictable patterns and the most available windows. He counts cycles. At cycle 7, the screen sound comes a notification, a message, something pulling the young man's attention downward and inward for 4 to 6 seconds. Rex puts his shoulder into the door at the beginning of cycle 8 in the 2-second window when the guard is at the far end of his arc. The door is a cheap interior model, the lock a basic residential tumbler. It requires more force than it should because Rex's shoulder is 63 years old. It requires it anyway. The noise is not silent, but the guard is looking at his phone. Rex is through the door and past the moment of vulnerability before the young man fully processes what is happening. He doesn't hurt him. He doesn't need to. He takes the phone from his hand and the car keys from his belt, and he walks with deliberate, unhurried purpose toward the warehouse's side exit. Behind him, the young man finds his voice. Rex is already at the door. Outside, the desert night is 68 degrees and perfectly dark between the scattering of security lights. He finds the car the keys belong to by pressing the fob and watching for taillights. A gray sedan, the least conspicuous vehicle in the lot. He gets in, starts. It drives out of the lot slowly and does not accelerate to anything that would attract attention until he is a quarter-mile down the access road. He needs a phone. The sedan has one, a burner he suspects sitting in the cup holder, the kind of instrument that men who do this work keep for situations exactly like the one the young guard is currently trying to explain to his supervisor. He picks it up, considers calling Holt, considers calling Burl, considers both, and decides that what he needs right now is not reassurance or backup or the comfort of another voice. What he needs is to get to Phoenix before Preston Draven decides that the most efficient resolution to his problem is to remove the person standing at the center of it. He points the gray sedan west on the highway. Phoenix glitters on the horizon like a second set of stars brought down to earth, enormous and indifferent, a city that has been reaching toward its own ambition for 70 years and shows no sign of stopping. Rex drives toward it at exactly the speed limit because getting stopped by highway patrol is a category of complication he cannot absorb right now. He is 63 years old. His shoulder hurts from the door. His right knee hurts from the trailer park this morning. His ribs on the right side have developed an opinion about the past 16 hours that they are expressing clearly. He doesn't think about any of it. He thinks about the server. He thinks about midnight. He thinks about Preston Draven in an office on the 9th floor of a building in downtown Phoenix, probably aware by now that his men had Rex and lost him, probably recalculating his available options with the cold intelligence of a man who did not build an $800 million operation by being slow to adapt. He thinks about what kind of man he is going to be when he walks into that building. He has the answer. The same kind he has been since this morning. The kind who took the gun out of the bag and put it in his jacket, but did not load it in anger, did not decide before he had reason to decide. The kind who called Holt before going to the trailer park. The kind who set up the server at 6:30 this morning, not because he planned to be taken, but because he has lived long enough to know that plans have edges, and the edges are where things go wrong. And the only answer to that is to have already moved the piece that matters before the game enters the part you can't control. The kind who keeps promises. Not the promise he made to May 16 years ago, though he is keeping that one too in the way that is possible to keep it by being here, by doing this, by choosing the version of himself that earns the promise, rather than simply avoiding the situations that test it. The other promise. The one he made in a garage in Hardwick, Arizona, to a photograph in a wallet. The one that has no words because some promises are made without them. The one that says, "This time I will get it right." Phoenix rises out of the desert ahead of him. Glass towers catching the last of the western light and throwing it back at the sky in 100 different frequencies. Rex drives into it with the windows down and the desert air in his face and the Colt against his ribs, and the server counting down toward midnight somewhere behind him in the digital dark. He does not know exactly what he will find on the 9th floor of the building that is his destination. He knows this, whatever he finds there, he has already made the last move. At 6:30 this morning in his garage with a cup of coffee going cold on the desk beside him. The rest is just the game playing out. Phoenix at night does not look like a city that does anything wrong. That is the thing about cities built on money. They learn early to make their surfaces luminous. Glass towers catching the last hour of western sky streets, clean and wide and confident. The whole enterprise arranged to suggest permanence and legitimacy and the specific virtue of scale. Rex drives the borrowed sedan through downtown Phoenix at 9:47 in the evening and watches the buildings go past and thinks about surfaces, about how long he spent in a different life, understanding that the more polished a surface, the more deliberate the decision to make it that way. The building he is looking for is on North Central Avenue. He has the address from the business card in his pocket, which is the only thing he has left from the afternoon, except the Colt against his ribs and the knowledge of what the server is going to do in 2 hours and 13 minutes. He parks the gray sedan 4 blocks north and walks. The night air in Phoenix is still carrying 91 degrees at this hour. The city holds heat the way cities do, all that concrete absorbing the day and giving it back slowly, reluctantly, as if the heat is the only honest thing left. Rex walks through it with his hands loose at his sides and his breathing measured, and his mind doing the thing it has always done before difficult situations, which is to simplify. Strip out everything that isn't necessary. Leave only what the next hour requires. He knows what he is walking into. He knows Preston Draven is expecting him. The men at the warehouse knew who he was before he arrived, which means Preston knew. Which means the 45 minutes between Rex leaving the warehouse and arriving in downtown Phoenix is exactly 45 minutes of preparation time that Preston has had and Rex has not. He knows Aldous Greer will likely be there. He knows there will be security in the building, the kind that belongs to men who have made the kinds of deals Preston has made, and understand that the relationships those deals require do not come with warranties. What Preston does not know is the server. What Preston does not know is that the last move was made at 6:30 this morning in a garage in Hardwick, Arizona, with a cup of coffee going cold on a workbench. This is enough. Rex has walked into rooms in worse condition with less. The building is 30 stories of reflective glass on the corner of Central and Camelback, the kind of structure that announces itself without needing a sign. A lobby visible through the ground floor glass marble floors, a reception desk, the after-hours stillness of a building that has sent most of its people home. Rex pushes through the revolving door, 2 security guards at the desk. The younger one is 25 if that, and has the posture of someone who has had recent training in looking alert. The older one is 50-something, thick through the shoulders, and looks up from the desk with the eyes of a man who has seen a lot of things come through lobby doors at this hour and has learned to read them quickly. The older guard's eyes move to Rex's face, then to the cut of his jacket, then back to his face. They stop there. Rex says, "I'm here to see Preston Draven." 9th floor. The younger guard reaches for his tablet. The older one holds up a hand without looking at his colleague. He says, "Name." Rex Calloway. The older guard picks up the desk phone, dials, speaks quietly, waits. His eyes stay on Rex throughout. He puts the phone down. "He's expecting you," the older guard says. "But I need to check you for weapons first." Rex spreads his arms. The younger guard runs the wand. It registers the Colt immediately, a single sustained tone, no ambiguity. The younger guard's hand moves toward his radio. The older guard says, "Sir, you cannot bring a firearm into this building." Rex says, "Then Mr. Draven is going to be disappointed. He requested this meeting." The older guard looks at him. Something is happening behind those eyes. A calculation, a recognition, the specific consideration of a man who has learned that the questions you don't ask are sometimes the ones that keep the evening from becoming a report. He says carefully, "Arizona is an open carry state." Rex says it is. The older guard says, "As long as it's visible and you're not concealing it, the law doesn't require you to surrender it at a private building's request." Rex reaches into his jacket. He removes the Colt and places it in the outside pocket where the outline is clearly visible through the fabric. Visible, not concealed. The specific legal distinction the older guard just handed him with the precision of a man who knows exactly what he is doing. Their eyes meet. The older guard has the eyes of a man who served somewhere before this job. He has the eyes specifically of a man who has known people like Rex Calloway and has decided in this particular moment to let what is going to happen happen. 9th floor, the older guard says. "Suite 900, straight off the elevator." Rex walks to the elevators, presses the button. The doors open on a car lined in brushed brass, his own reflection looking back at him. Gray hair, 63 years of desert in his face, the jacket with its visible outline. He looks like exactly what he is. A man out of time in the wrong building, doing the only thing available to him. The doors close. The 9th floor opens onto thick carpet and recessed lighting, and the smell of expensive wood, and the particular quality of silence that exists in spaces where significant money is managed. The hallway is wide and empty. At the far end, double doors of dark mahogany stand closed. Suite 900, Rex walks to them, knocks once, "Come in." He pushes the doors open. The office is large enough to make a statement about the man it belongs to. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 walls. The Phoenix skyline spread out in every direction. The city performing its luminous innocence for anyone who cares to look. Leather furniture, original artwork, a desk that costs more than most people earn in a year. The details of a man who grew up knowing what the right objects signal and acquired them accordingly. Preston Draven stands behind the desk. He is 41 years old, and the years have been entirely kind to him in the way that sufficient money tends to make years kind. Well-proportioned face, dark hair worn short on the sides, a suit that fits the way suits fit when they are made rather than bought. He has the particular self-possession of a man who has never had to wonder whether he belongs in the room he is standing in. The confidence of that Rex observes is genuine. Preston Draven did not arrive at this office through accident or inheritance alone. He is intelligent, patient, and capable, and the capabilities he has deployed have taken him exactly as far as they have taken him, which is to the edge of $800 million and the thing standing in the way of it. Beside the desk stands Aldous Greer, 64 years old, silver-haired, the three-piece suit in measured posture of someone whose presence in a room is itself a form of argument. His eyes carry the specific quality of a man who has spent 40 years understanding how situations can be arranged to produce desired outcomes, and who is currently arranging this one in his head. Preston steps forward, extends a hand across the desk. Rex looks at the hand, does not take it. Preston withdraws it without visible embarrassment. He says, "Mr. Calloway, thank you for coming." He says it as if Rex arrived by appointment, as if there was no warehouse, no 4 hours in a locked room, no borrowed sedan in the parking structure 4 blocks north. Rex says, "Let's talk about what happens next." Aldous Greer says, "Mr. Calloway, my name is Aldous Greer. I'm Mr. Draven's senior counsel. I want to be very clear about the nature of tonight's conversation." Rex says, "You want to be clear about what you need from me and what it costs my mother if you don't get it." A brief pause. Then Greer says, "We prefer to think of it as a business resolution." Rex looks at Preston. He says, "Your man went into my mother's diner and put his hands on an 85-year-old woman. That's not business. That's a decision. And decisions have weight." Preston says, "Mr. Calloway, let me be direct with you." He sits on the edge of his desk, arms crossed, entirely at ease. "You've had what sounds like an eventful day. You've spoken with Wade, you've spoken with the sheriff. You've assembled some information about our operation that, taken out of context, could look concerning. But here's the reality of the situation." He pauses. "Your phone was taken this evening. Whatever you gathered from Wade's documents is gone. You're in my building in my city, and you have no leverage." He opens his hands in a gesture of reasonableness. "What I'm offering you is simple. Go back to Hardwick. Speak with your mother. Help her understand that selling the property is the most sensible thing she can do. We'll increase our offer to $250,000. She retires comfortable. The project moves forward. Everyone finds a way to live with this." Rex is quiet for a moment. He says, "And if she says no?" Preston's expression doesn't change. He says, "Then I think we've reached the limit of what I can protect her from." The room is very still. Rex looks at the man across from him. He looks at the easy confidence of him, the precise calibration of every word and gesture, the absolute certainty of someone who has always had sufficient resources to make problems resolve in the direction he preferred. He looks at the son of Holt Draven, who rode with Rex for 12 years, who got out of the life and went to Nevada and raised this boy with every advantage he could arrange, and whose hands were shaking this afternoon in a garage in Hardwick when he read the name on a business card. He says, "I know your father." The easy expression shifts, just slightly, just enough. Rex says, "I rode with Holt Draven for 12 years. We went through things together that you don't have words for because you've never needed words for them. He looked at your name on that card this afternoon like a man reading a death sentence." Preston says, "My father is a man who spent 30 years of his life doing nothing with it." Rex says he spent 30 years of his life being someone you could trust. Preston says trust. He says it with the specific contempt of a man who has decided that what his father values is a form of weakness he transcended. Trust and honor and all those road words. You know what they are? They're the language of men who don't have better options. Rex says no. They're the language of men who've decided what they're willing to become. Greer steps forward. He says, "This is not a productive direction. Mr. Calloway, let me be unambiguous. You came here armed. You are, by your own history, a man with a significant violent record. You've assaulted one of Mr. Draven's employees, you've been making threats, and you're in this office with a weapon that's visible, specifically to exploit a legal technicality." He opens his hands. If anything goes wrong in this room tonight, the story writes itself very easily. Rex says, "The story already wrote itself. 6:30 this morning." A pause. Greer and Preston exchange a look, brief, precise, the communication of two people who have worked together long enough to speak without speaking. Preston says, "What does that mean?" Rex says, "It means the documents I gathered from Wade Murch's trailer were uploaded to a server at 6:30 this morning, before I went to the trailer park. Before your people took my phone." He pauses. "The server has a standing instruction. At midnight tonight, everything goes automatically to 3 places: FBI Phoenix Field Office, the Arizona Attorney General, and the Associated Press, unless I enter a cancel code before midnight." The temperature in the room drops. Preston is still. Completely precisely still, the stillness of a very intelligent man processing a variable he did not account for, running the implications out to their ends, arriving at the same place from every direction. Greer says, "You're bluffing." Rex says, "My phone is in a warehouse east of the city. My watch reads 11:14. That gives you 46 minutes to decide whether I'm bluffing." Silence. Greer reaches inside his jacket and produces a small revolver. Snub-nosed, matte black, the kind of weapon that exists for exactly this kind of room, close quarters, clear lines, unmistakable intent. He holds it with the competence of a man who knows how to use it and the caution of a man who understands the weight of using it. He says, "You're going to give me the access code. You're going to cancel the transmission, and then you're going to sit down and we're going to come to a reasonable arrangement." Rex looks at the gun. He looks at the gun the way he has looked at guns before, as information, as a statement about the person holding it, as a set of variables to be considered. Greer holds it like a man who has made a decision but is hoping the decision remains theoretical. The grip is controlled. The hand is steady. But the eyes are doing the thing that eyes do when a man has crossed a line he did not entirely plan to cross. Rex says, "You're going to shoot me in a building with security cameras. In an office your name is on the lease for." Greer says, "Self-defense. A man with your history armed making threats." Rex says, "My weapon is in plain sight. I haven't threatened anyone. I walked in here and had a conversation." Greer says, "Your history will speak for itself to any jury in this state." Rex considers this. It is not an irrational argument. He has a long history of association with violence. He is in this room with a weapon. The narrative available to a skilled lawyer with sufficient resources is not nothing. But Rex Calloway has been thinking about this room since this afternoon, since the warehouse, since the drive to Phoenix in a borrowed car. With 46 minutes left on a countdown, he said himself. He says, "The code." Greer says, "Yes." Rex says, "I don't have it." Greer blinks. Preston's jaw tightens. Rex says, "The code isn't in my head. It's on a piece of paper in the top left drawer of my desk in the garage in Hardwick. I set it up that way because I've lived long enough to know that men under pressure can be made to do things they don't plan to do. And the most reliable way to not give up information you need to protect is to genuinely not have access to it when someone needs it from you." He lets that land. He says, "There's another copy. Two people in Hardwick have the server address and instructions to forward everything to the FBI and the AG if I don't call by 11:30. It's 11:16. Preston says, "You're lying." Rex says, "You said that in the warehouse too. Your man had 40 minutes with me. He asked me the right questions. I didn't give him the right answers." He pauses. "How much of that time did you think I was lying?" The silence in the room is the silence of a calculation arriving at its answer. Preston pushes off the desk. He walks to the window, looks out at Phoenix, the city of his ambition, glass and light, and the permanent horizon of a place that asks no questions about where the money came from. He stands there for a moment that is longer than a moment, and when he turns back, Rex can see in his face the first true thing he has seen there all evening. Not fear, not anger. Something more complicated, the expression of a man who is 41 years old and has built something enormous and is watching it come apart from the one angle he did not think to protect. Rex says, "Here's what happens next." Preston looks at him. Rex says, "You call your investors tonight. You dissolve Copper Sun Development. Every property that was purchased under that entity is returned to the original owners at the purchase price plus 15%. You turn yourself in to the FBI Phoenix field office. You do this before the server transmits at midnight, which means you do it in the next 40 minutes. He pauses. "If you do this, the transmission happens anyway. I can't stop it from here, but you've begun a process of cooperation that your attorney, a different attorney than Mr. Greer, can use. And if I don't," Rex says, "then the transmission happens and you don't get the option. I just offered you." Greer says, "You don't have the authority to offer anything. You're not law enforcement." Rex says, "No, I'm a 63-year-old man whose mother was beaten in her own kitchen." He looks at Greer. "Put the gun down. You don't want to be holding that when the elevator opens." Greer says, "What elevator?" The elevator opens. The sound of it comes from the hallway, the soft mechanical exhalation of doors parting, then footsteps on the thick carpet, and then the double doors to the suite open from the outside, and Holt Draven is standing in the doorway. He is 66 years old, and he fills the frame the way he has always filled frames, and the lines in his face tonight are cut deeper than usual, and his eyes are the eyes of a man who has made the most costly decision of his life and is standing on the other side of it. Beside him are two men in dark jackets with the specific bearing of federal law enforcement. the posture, the hands, the eyes that have seen everything and stopped being surprised by any of it. And behind them in the hallway, the familiar shape of Burl Taggart in his sheriff's uniform, hat in hand, standing straight for the first time in 3 years. Holt Draven looks at his son. Preston says, "Dad." His voice does something on the word that it hasn't done all evening. Something young, something that belongs to a version of him that existed before the suits and the towers and the $800 million ambition. Holt doesn't speak. One of the federal agents steps past Holt into the room. He identifies himself and his agency, and he says the words that the law uses when it is doing what it is supposed to do. And there is a particular weight to those words in this room at this hour that Rex feels in his chest without being entirely certain what to call the feeling. Greer lowers the revolver. He sets it on the desk with the careful movement of a man who understands that the calculus of this moment has resolved, and that his role in the rest of it is to say as few words as possible until he can speak to an attorney. Preston says nothing as the second agent moves toward him. He looks at his father throughout the entire time, through the reading of his rights, through the application of the handcuffs, through the moment when the agent's hand takes his arm and begins to guide him toward the door. He looks at Holt with the expression of someone expecting something, a word, a gesture, some signal from the man who taught him to ride a bicycle on a street in Nevada, and who sat in the front row at his law school graduation, and who called him 4 months ago when the rumors started and listened to the assurances and chose to accept them. Holt looks back at him. He does not speak. He does not look away. He holds his son's eyes through all of it with the expression of a man paying a debt he can't afford and cannot refuse. When Preston passes him in the doorway, Holt says one thing. He says it quietly just to Preston, and Rex is the only other person close enough to hear it. He says, "I love you. That doesn't change. And you did this." Preston doesn't answer. The door closes behind the agents and the sound of footsteps recedes down the corridor toward the elevator. Holt stands in the doorway. Rex walks to him. They don't speak for a moment. Holt's face is doing things that faces do when they are containing more than they were built to contain, and Rex stands close to him in the way of someone who understands that proximity can say things that words cannot. After a moment, Holt puts one hand on Rex's shoulder, and Rex puts one hand on Holt's arm, and they stand there like that in the doorway of a ninth-floor office in Phoenix while Burl Taggart looks at the floor and gives them whatever privacy a hallway allows. Rex says, "You came anyway." Holt says, "You told me blood makes you hesitate." "Yes, I hesitated for about an hour," Holt says. "Then I called Burl." Rex looks at Burl over Holt's shoulder. Burl meets his eyes. There is no pride in Burl's face, no relief. Just the bare scraped expression of a man who has done the right thing at the last available moment and understands that the last available moment is not the same as doing it in time. Rex says, "You wired up." Burl says, "Everything from the moment they brought Preston out. The federal boys got here fast." He pauses. "I called them this afternoon. After you left my office." After Burl says, "I know. It is not enough. They all know it is not enough, but it is what is available." One of the federal agents returns from the elevator. He stops in the doorway and looks at Rex and says, "Mr. Calloway, we're going to need to speak with you. Tonight, if possible." Rex says, "I know." He pulls out the burner phone from his jacket pocket. Dials. It rings twice, and Garrett Wills answers on the second ring. Rex says, "It's me. Don't transmit." Garrett says, "Confirm the code." Rex gives the code. Here's the keys on the other end. Garrett says, "Canceled." "You okay?" Rex says, "Getting there." He ends the call. The server will still have been accessed by the FBI through the information he sent to Holt earlier in the evening. Holt, he learns in the following minutes, forwarded the server address to the federal agents along with a personal statement about his knowledge of his son's operation that cost him something Rex will not be able to fully measure for a long time. The statement the agents tell Rex was the piece that moved things quickly. Rex looks at Holt when they say this. Holt is studying the carpet. Rex says quietly, "Thank you, brother." Holt says, "Don't." Rex says, "I'm saying it anyway." The aftermath moves at the speed of institutions, which is to say it moves slowly and without drama and with a great deal of paperwork. Rex spends 3 hours in a federal building downtown answering questions and providing documentation and giving formal statements to people with recorders and legal pads who ask their questions with the careful, neutral professionalism of people for whom this situation is extraordinary in its specifics but routine in its structure. Copper Sun Development, LLC is frozen the same night. Its accounts, its pending transactions, its legal instruments. Bunovitz suspended pending investigation. The Arizona Gaming Commission contacted at 2:30 in the morning by an agent who understands that bureaucratic courtesy has its limits, begins the process of reviewing and suspending the casino approval. The 8 property transfers, all of which were executed under coercive circumstances that the documents and Murch's testimony and Holt's statement make clear, are flagged for reversal. By the time Rex walks out of the federal building into the Phoenix pre-dawn, the temperature has dropped to 74 degrees and the sky to the east is beginning its slow shift from black to the deep blue that comes before the first suggestion of gold. He stands on the sidewalk and breathes the air and feels the specific exhaustion of a man who has been awake for 23 hours and whose body has kept a detailed and non-negotiable accounting of all of them. Burl Taggart is standing by a truck in the parking structure across the street. He sees Rex come out and walks over. They stand on the sidewalk together. Burl says, "What happens to me now?" Rex says, "That depends on the people whose jobs it is to make that determination. That's not a comfort." "I know." A pause. Burl says, "Margaret's in remission." The doctors think it held. Rex says, "I'm glad, Burl. I spent 3 years compromising everything I was supposed to be." Burl says, "For that, for her." Rex says, "I know what you did and I know why you did it. Those are 2 different conversations." He pauses. "When the moment came, you were in that hallway. That matters." Burl is quiet. Then, "It should have mattered sooner." "Yes," Rex says, "it should have." They stand there in the pre-dawn quiet of Phoenix, 2 older men on a sidewalk, and there is nothing else to say about it that either of them doesn't already know. Rex takes a cab to the parking structure where he left the Harley. The bike is there untouched the way Harleys tend to be in parking structures, because even thieves have a respect for the implicit weight of the thing. He gets on it and starts it, and the sound fills the structure and bounces off the concrete ceiling and comes back changed deeper, familiar as his own heartbeat. He rides back to Hardwick on Route 60. The desert at 4 in the morning is the most honest version of itself. No performance, no ceremony. Just the dark and the cold and the road and the particular stars that only come out when the heat of the day has finally given up and gone somewhere else. Rex rides through it at 60 miles an hour, and the wind takes his hair back, and the white line at the center of the road comes at him, one section at a time, and he lets his mind be exactly as empty as the highway. He stops once on the shoulder 40 miles east of Phoenix, cuts the engine, gets off the bike, stands at the edge of the road with the desert stretching out on both sides in the dark, and the stars enormous overhead, the way they only are when you are far enough from city light. He reaches into his jacket, takes out the wallet, opens it to the photograph. Denny Ware, 24 years old, grinning. Rex stands there with the photograph in his hand for a long time. The desert doesn't care. The stars don't care. Nothing out here is organized around what Rex Calloway needs from it, and that is exactly the right environment for the conversation he is having with a photograph. He says out loud and quietly into the dark, "I didn't do it right. I still didn't do it completely right, but I didn't pull the gun." He pauses. "I'm not sure that's what you'd have said mattered. I think you'd have said the part that mattered was May, that I got there, that I didn't let it be permanent." The desert does not answer. The stars do not offer their opinion. Rex puts the photograph back in the wallet, but before he does, he looks at it one more time. He folds the wallet closed, gets back on the bike, rides home. May's diner is lit up at midnight like a beacon. Rex can see it from the end of Mesquite, the windows warm and yellow against the dark of the street, the open sign not turned on, but the interior lights fully blazing the parking lot with 8 motorcycles in various states of age and dignity arranged along the curb with the casual authority of vehicles that have been parked in many parking lots and have decided that this one will suit them. He pulls in at 12:14 in the morning. Through the window, he can see his mother behind the counter. She is moving, not the careful, pained movement of this morning, still careful, still favoring the ribs, but with the uprightness restored, the particular carriage of a woman who has been carrying herself since 1939 and has not yet found a sufficient reason to stop. She is pouring coffee. 8 men around the counter, and in the nearest booths, men with silver hair and scarred hands and jackets, bearing the insignia of a life they lived together and walked away from together. Men who got calls tonight and got on their bikes and rode however many miles it took to be in this room at this hour because Rex Calloway asked them to be here. Holt Draven is at the far end of the counter. He got here before Rex. He is sitting with a coffee cup in both hands, and he is not talking to anyone, and no one is pressing him to. There is a specific grace in that, the grace of a group of men who understand that some kinds of weight need space around them. Rex pushes the door open. The bell rings, the same bell. It has always been the same 2-note cheerful sound that has been entirely wrong for and entirely right for this diner simultaneously for 4 decades. Several of the men look up. A few nod. One, a man named Grady that Rex rode with for 8 years and hasn't seen in 4, raises his coffee cup in a minimal toast. May turns around. She looks at her son. Rex looks at his mother. Her eye is still swollen. The bruise has moved into the next stage, darker at the center, beginning to find its edges, the body's slow bureaucratic processing of an event it did not consent to. But she is standing straight. She is holding the coffee pot the way she has held it for 41 years, and her eyes on Rex's face are the eyes of a woman who raised him and has spent the past 17 hours not knowing what condition he would be in when she saw him next, and who is now doing the work of not letting him see how much that cost her. Rex crosses the diner. He takes the coffee pot from her hands and sets it on the counter. Then he puts his arms around her. Gently, the way you hold something that has been hurt, that you are afraid of hurting again with the weight of your care. She puts her arms around him, and they stand there for a moment, mother and son, 63 and 85, in the middle of a diner at 12:15 in the morning, with 8 old bikers pretending to look at their coffee cups. He says into her hair, "It's done, Ma." She says, "Are you okay?" He says, "Mostly." She pulls back and looks at his face with the diagnostic attention of a woman who has been reading this face for 63 years and knows every version of it. She sees the shoulder that is held slightly wrong. She sees the tiredness that goes past the physical. She sees the thing that is different about his eyes compared to this morning, which is not the absence of what was in them, but the presence of something else alongside it. Something settled. She says, "Sit down. I'll make pancakes." He almost smiles. He sits at the counter. Holt moves one stool to make room and doesn't say anything, and Rex doesn't say anything, and they sit there side by side in the specific, comfortable silence of men who have been through a country together that has no name on any map. May cracks eggs with one hand. The grill hisses. The smell of butter and coffee and the particular warmth of a room that has been feeding people for 4 decades fills the space. Around Rex, the conversation begins quiet at first, then gradually finding its footing, the way conversations do when the pressure that was holding everything tight has finally eased. Stories. Old stories mostly. The kind that have been told before and are being told again because the telling is the point, not the information. The kind of stories that mean we were here, we did these things, they mattered, we survived them, and some of us are still here to say so. Rex reaches into his wallet. He takes out the photograph of Denny Ware. He sets it on the counter in front of his face up. He looks at it while May makes pancakes and the grill hisses, and the old men around him tell their stories, and Holt Draven sits at the end of the counter carrying his own weight in his own silence. He looks at the photograph for a long time. Then he places it face down on the counter. Not in his wallet. On the counter, between his coffee cup and the space where May will put his plate. There, present. Not hidden, not displayed, just there. It is the first time in 33 years he has put it down. The dawn comes to Hardwick the way it always comes, without asking permission, without adjusting itself to the preferences of the people it finds in its path. The sky to the east starts its shift from deep blue to the bruised purple that comes before gold, and the desert begins its daily conversion from a place of hypothetical distances to a place of visible ones. Rex and May are standing on the front step of the diner. The rest of the men have gone, some to motel rooms, some to the road, Holt to the extra bedroom above Rex's garage that Rex offered without negotiation, and Holt accepted without thanks, because between them, thanks is unnecessary for things that simply have to be done. The diner is quiet behind them. The coffee is still on. It will always be still on. May has a cup in both hands. Rex has one in his right. They stand on the step and watch Route 60 lighten as the sun gets its bearings. After a while, May says, "You took the gun out of the bag yesterday morning." Rex says, "Yes." She says, "But you didn't fire it." He says, "No." She says, "I used to think the hardest thing was watching you be what you were. All those years." She pauses. "Now I think the hardest thing was watching you be something different. Knowing what it cost you, knowing you had that other thing right there inside you all the time, and every day you chose not to let it out." Rex says some days it was easier than others. She looks at him. She says, "Yesterday wasn't easy." He says, "No." She says, "But you stopped. When it was finished, you stopped and came back." Rex is quiet for a moment. He says, "Denny would have said I was 33 years too slow." May considers this. She says Denny was 24 years old. He would have said a lot of things that were true and some that were too simple. She puts her hand on her son's arm. "You got there. That's what counts." Route 60 is beginning to carry its first traffic. A truck heading west, probably out of Tucson. A pickup heading east with the particular urgency of someone who started late. The ordinary commerce of a morning beginning. Rex says they're going to want me to testify. Federal trial probably takes 18 months to get to court. May says, will you? He says, yes. She says, and after that, he looks at the road. He says, same as before. Garage, coffee, pancakes on Thursday. May is quiet for a moment. Then she says, you know what I realized last night when you were gone and I didn't know where you were or what was happening? He says, what she says that I've been scared of you going back to that life for 16 years. Every time something hard happened, that was the thing I was most afraid of. She pauses. And yesterday the hard thing happened. And you went. And you were that man when you needed to be. And then you came back and you were my son again. She looks at him. I was wrong to be scared of what you might become. I should have had more faith in what you already were. Rex says nothing. May says your father would have said you were an idiot for going to Phoenix alone at 63 years old with the bad shoulder. Rex says he would have been right. She says he also would have said what I said, that you got there. They stand in the morning for a while longer. The sun clears the horizon fully, and the desert lights up in the way it does. Red rock going gold, the distant mesas taking on their daytime faces, the long flat distances becoming themselves. A hawk lifts off from somewhere near the tree line east of the diner and angles up into the warming air and begins its patient circles, reading the thermals, looking for what it needs. Rex watches it until it is a small, dark shape against the brightening sky. He finishes his coffee, hands the cup to May. She takes it the way she has taken things from his hands for 63 years without ceremony, because that is what you do when you belong to someone. You take what they hand you and you hold it and you don't make a production of it. He walks to the Harley. He checks the fuel, adjusts the mirror on the right side that has been slightly off since Tucson 2 weeks ago. These small attentions, the ordinary maintenance of a machine that carries him, that asks nothing of him except that he care for it honestly. He swings his leg over, his knee registers its opinion. He notes it and lets it go. He starts the engine. The sound of the fat boy on the corner of Mesquite and 3rd fills the early morning of Hardwick, Arizona, the way it has filled it for 16 years, rolling off the brick storefronts and coming back changed deeper, answering itself in the way that sound does when it has somewhere solid to reflect from. A few lights flicker on in the buildings down the street, the morning doing what mornings do. Rex looks at May on the step. She raises her coffee cup, a small gesture, a complete one. He puts the bike in gear and rolls out of the lot onto Mesquite and points it east on Route 60. The desert opens up ahead of him. It doesn't care about Rex Calloway. Doesn't care about what happened last night or what happens next or the weight of 33 years in the photograph that is face down on a counter in a diner that will be here when he gets back. It just stretches out ahead of him, red and gold and indifferent, the way it has stretched ahead of every person who has ever pointed themselves into it and asked it to hold them. The road gives him the same answer it always gives. Keep moving. Rex opens the throttle. The sound of the engine carries down Route 60 and out across the desert and up into the morning air, where the hawk is still circling, patient and watchful and entirely itself, and then it is gone, swallowed by the distance, by the wind, by the ordinary enormous silence of a landscape that has been here since before there were names for anything, and will be here long after the last name is spoken. What remains on the corner of Mesquite and 3rd in Hardwick, Arizona, is a diner that has been here for 41 years. A woman inside it who has been here for 85. And on the counter next to an empty coffee cup, a photograph placed face down in the morning light, not lost, not forgotten, just set down finally by a man who had been carrying it long enough.